welcome to this second episode of Dilemmas, Series 2 of the Real Sales Manager podcast, where we explore typical dilemmas faced by practicing sales managers. I'm Steve Hoyle. I'm delighted to be joined by my guest. Firstly, my two regular guests, Sophie Steele, who describes herself as a coach, trainer, a recovering sales manager who now spends her time figuring out exactly what makes people perform. Hi, Sophie. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Steve. Great to be here. Hi, Sami and Richard.
Richard Bounds is a sales leader with over 30 years experience scaling businesses from startups to trade sales, managing large enterprise sales teams across Europe. And he now works as a board advisor and fractional leader, helping tech companies accelerate revenue and scale. Welcome, Richard.
Thanks, Steve. Glad to be here too. Nice to see you all again.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. We also have our special guest today. I'm delighted we're joined by Sami Ammous. Sami spent many years in senior leadership roles in tech companies in APAC and Middle East regions, navigating nuanced cultures, economic turmoil, and the shift to SaaS solutions. Today, Sami is the founder, and he calls himself the Chief Change Maker. I think that's a great title. At kyadah, a B2B SaaS fractional sales advisory company, helping companies achieve their potential through building and executing sales and go-to-market strategies and fractional leadership for senior sales roles. So, Sami, welcome. Where are you today?
I am in very hot Singapore. It's been, people complain about the rain, but it's been really dry and hot the last few days. But it's a pleasure to be here on the podcast, and thank you for the very generous introduction.
Okay, great. Well, listen, let's get straight into it. We'll kick things off. I'm just going to describe the dilemma, which I think is fairly typical facing many sales managers. So here we go. Let's imagine a lead has come in. For some people, that's news in itself. But a lead has come in, and it looks like it should be a fairly easy sell, as it's to replicate what they have from your company, in another country. The value is not insignificant and would take you and your team past 100% for this half year. So quite important. There is some work to be done, but you rate it very highly if handled competently, and you should get the business. But they have two centres in your country, one in the north and one in the south, and it appears that decision makers are split roughly equally between the two locations, although the CFO, who will be the final approver, sits in the north. So you could ask your most experienced and most successful salesperson, I'm going to call this person Nat North, so you could ask Nat North to handle it from the north, or a struggling salesperson in the south. I'm going to call them Sam South. Sam, you employed 12 months ago. They are struggling and will go on a PIP, a performance improvement plan, if their numbers don't improve soon. So the question basically is, who do you give this deal to? You need the deal, but do you give it to one of your A players? Fairly certain you would get it if that's the case, or do you help out somebody who's struggling? So, Richard, what's your take on this?
I suppose about any sort of difficult question like this, you probably just need to reset a bit in terms of what are your leadership principles. And I think I was thinking that I would probably have three core elements, which would be, results, making the customer successful, and also developing the team. So those three things, everything would be built on. I think also, as a personal thing, as a leader, I've always been very keen on fairness and consistency and having very established rules. So to be blunt, I think I'd probably have clearer rules to begin with, which might mean that, if the head office is in this specific location, it means that it would go to, Sam South or Nat North or what have you. But given the parameters that we're working with, I guess you're naturally drawn to the guy in the north, but there's maybe a bigger issue in terms of the person in the south. And if you don't trust them to give them this type of opportunity, do you need to be doing something else? I think I'd look at why their results aren't right, why they're potentially going to a PIP, and if they're doing the right things, they're they're coachable, they're motivated, they've got good activity levels, I would potentially look at pairing the two up. I know it might seem a bit of a cop-out, but actually getting the person in the north to potentially mentor the southern guy and work on the deal together, especially if it's quite vague and they could both see that it should be given to them. And it might be a chance to develop the person on the pit on the Sam South. But I do think if there are other behaviours and there's other factors, I think I'd hasten the exit plan for Sam South if they aren't doing the right thing as well.
Right. Okay, so it's always going to be a little bit nuanced depending a bit more on the situation. All right, Sophie, what's your initial take on this?
Well, Richard's covered a huge amount all in one go, and there are elements in there that I naturally agree with, but I lean more towards, what is it about the Sam South, if you like, that made them hireable 12 months ago, but they're not performing now. And, it would be so easy naturally to think about the existing business and the customer and give it to the person that's most likely to close the business, because you don't want to use customers as training opportunities for underperforming salespeople. But at the same time, nobody gets enough meaningful opportunities to become great if you don't share them out. So I actually really like the idea of a North and South mentor sort of coach approach. But I'd also be looking at the sales manager a little bit, and I'd be asking what's happened over the last 12 months that this person is, heading towards a PIP, and have they been given the opportunities and the coaching and the development that they need, and what's changed? So that's where my curiosity lies.
Oh, okay. But you would be more inclined to give it to Sam South. I mean, Richard was more inclined to Nat North.
Yeah, so I'd be more inclined to give it to Sam South, because otherwise you create an even bigger divide. And if you always give the opportunity to the safe pair of hands, nobody will ever get the opportunity to develop. I like give it to the Sam South with the support, so he can learn to also be really great and close those deals.
Right. Okay, interesting. Right, Sami. So I'm sure you've been in situations many times where you have to allocate a lead. Yeah, Richard made the point the rules should probably be a bit tighter to start with, but situations arise where it's not clear. How would you approach this?
I think I want to push back a little bit on how the situation might arise. I think that as a manager, these things need to be set in stone, or as far as possible in stone as possible, ahead of deals coming in. And usually deals of that size, something that'll push you to over 100%, usually there are, even for exceptions, deals of that scale, there's usually rules for the exceptions as well. And that's been my experience at larger corporations. However, if say I have the deciding vote, let's say it's all balanced out and all the systems are in place, and like, you know what, the rule book says the last step is the manager needs to decide, I would most probably go with the salesperson that has the highest chance to close the deal. And my focus wouldn't be so much about equality or fairness within the team. It is that something that Sophie said, which is customers are not the training ground. And what I mean by that is not that people don't learn while interacting with customers. It's that the way they learn isn't about, oh, I'm struggling with my numbers, so please give me an easy deal or a deal that's about to close. It's more you learn by, you have 5 or 6 different things that you're strong at. You have a weakness here. Let's expose you to customers that will help you work on that weakness, rather than just say, oh, this deal is going to bring you over 100% or whatever it is. So my focus would be what is the thing that's going to help us close the business, increase our chances of closing the business most, and then look at the performance issues that have to do with this person on PIP, which, it could be any sort of thing. I mean, imagine you're having this PIP conversation and this person is, but I made 120% last year, and the conversation is just screwed over because you gave them this layup that they just closed. So it's I think that's the focus I'd be looking at.
Yeah, no, I get that. That if they only make their numbers, avoid the PIP because of this deal, then you're just, as we say, kicking the can down the road if there are real issues. I mean, the other side of the dilemma here, though, for me is somebody like Sam. They've been with you 12 months. They're struggling. There's probably a confidence issue there as well. So to help them a little bit, to get them going, to give them some confidence, might just catalyze them to be really successful. So again, for me, you need to know a lot more about Sam and probably Nat in the north. But Nat's a good salesperson. You need to know a little bit more about Sam. Okay, interesting. Can I just, because it really raises a debate that came up in series 1 of the podcast, where some of my guests were very adamant that if you think about, you've typically got your A players, your top 10, 20% superstars. You've maybe got some C players, some people who are struggling, and then you've got the bulk in the middle. Sam is maybe, lower end of B or C, we're not quite sure. Do you focus your time as a manager on helping the bulk of those kind of average people, or do you really just focus on helping the A players to really thrive? What's your philosophy on that, Sami? How do you focus more on the superstars and get them improving, or do you spend your time with the more average players?
I probably, if I reflect on what has happened historically, I probably be spending more time with the average players.
Okay.
Or in other words, I spend more time with people who need help. And because the thing is, once you have those, your top players, some of them are just good salespeople. So they really need very little guidance, but some of them are blessed with, big accounts or good relationships in a specific account that helps them make their numbers. And even the top players will struggle sometimes. So my point is not necessarily to go after the average performance. It's more, what are you struggling with today? And for the top players, it could be, I need a connection here. I have this problem with the product there. I'm working with a new team within the company that we're not gelling, and all those things could hinder even a top player. So, but historically, if I'm being honest, instinctively, I tend to spend more time with the struggling players rather than the top players.
Yeah, it's a big debate. In series 1, I think it was Mike Slater in particular, who was adamant that no, we should just focus on the top performers, because if you increase their business by 10, 20%, it has a huge impact. I'm not just sure about that. Sophie, where would you be philosophically on this?
I've practiced it in real time many years ago, and for me it comes down to Pareto's principle. You get 80% of your business from 20% of your top performers. And something that we did in an organisation that I worked for many years ago is that I was employed as a business coach to actually work exclusively with the top performers, because the incremental benefits that you get from making them better is more than what you get in investing in your average performers. So it becomes, you work with your top 20% and you make them better, and actually it drives the business.
Okay.
It doesn't mean to say there isn't a place for coaching and development with your average performers, but you won't get the returns.
But it's driven by the spreadsheet. If you increase these guys by this much.
Skills and capabilities, so not just a number. So you're looking at skills and capabilities and their ability to be coached. Are they coachable, and what are they willing to do differently, even though they're already a top performer?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Okay. Richard, where do you sit on this?
I think it's interesting. I mean, I've probably spent a lot of my time with B players, thinking I can get them to be A players. Maybe sometimes too much time invested in trying to help and develop those people. But I guess to Sophie's point as well, if you're going to get 70, 80% of your revenue from your top 20%, with results being the kind of the number one metric that we're kind of all measured on, I've spent a lot of time on supporting those larger deals, larger customers, bigger projects as well, and perhaps being quite hands-on with some of those deals, and as a result, some of the AEs. But I also get that, often at times those guys or girls will be highly proficient, have key accounts, and have good relationships, and can be quite autonomous, which does allow you to sort of spend a bit more time trying to progress the B players.
Okay, I mean, I think it's something that I would really encourage. There's a lot of new sales managers listen to or view this podcast, and just encourage them to think clearly about that, where you get the most return. Is there also a dimension around the rest of the team? Sophie, sorry, you wanted to.
Yeah, I just an important point when we think about, those top performers that are quite autonomous and they're able to sort of get on with it and deliver. I think we can sometimes lose sight of the fact that these people also need our input. They also need development, and they're the people that tend to leave if they don't get it. They're the people that tend to wave their card and jump ship because nobody invested time in their own learning and development, because they were very good and they were autonomous and they were left to get on with it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a danger if we adopt that mentality and forget about our star performers, and then, shift our focus of direction onto, as Richard put it, the B players. I've seen that happen before as well. They weren't interested in me. Nobody developed me. I was just left to get on with it. So I think that's we've got to be wary of that.
Right. Oh, okay. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. I was going to raise the question about the team. I mean, if we go back to, do we give this lead to Nat in the north or Sam in the south? How do you think does that impact the rest of the team? Your decision there. Could they say, oh, they're just favouring Nat because Nat's a favourite, or that they're favouring Sam? They're rescuing somebody who's potentially failing. Sami, is that something you'd think about, how the rest of the team react to these kind of decisions, or is that
100%.
just? Oh, okay.
No, 100%. It's absolutely a critical thing about how the team not just views that decision, but how they view each other and how they view me as a leader. And we said I spend a lot of time with whatever the struggling performers, and yes, but also I spent a lot of time trying to explain to people why the decisions are taken the way they're taken, and it's an important thing for people to understand why things happen. Things are perceived as unfairness or favoritism or whatever you want to label it, mostly because people just don't understand why the decision was taken. So just going back to the very beginning of the conversation, if the rules are set and it's clear, and people understand that rule A is deal size, rule B is geography, rule C is performance, and then based on these three, when you naturally give it to Nat, that kind of just kills the conversation. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important thing. And also I think most reasonable people, especially team players, would want their best people on it. So imagine if you are a supporting team, not necessarily just an account manager. You're an SE, you're a specialist, you're a renewals. All those people, yes, they're salespeople, yes, they're paid on commission, but at the end of the day, if the deal doesn't close, they're not paid. And to them, they'd also want the top performer on the deal.
Okay. But as somebody, I forgot who it was, said, if you give everything to Nat, they become very successful, they earn lots of money, but your B players maybe don't get the opportunities to gain some confidence or whatever.
Yeah, which brings us back to the beginning of the conversation, which is you don't assign account managers based on the most lucrative deals. Best practice from my point of view would be everyone gets a somewhat equal share of the pie, whether it's geography, whether it's the size of the customer, whether it's a named account, whether it's a vertical. And then there's always a stretch goal. So if I go and I give an account manager my three top banks, I don't give them the same quota as someone who was given the one telco or like 20 mid-sized companies, because realistically the base of the business is going to be bigger in the bank. So I expect their goal to be as a percentage of existing business. So it's going to be as an absolute value much higher. So their performance is going to be linked to a relative performance to themselves and to the accounts they're dealing with, rather than just an absolute number.
Yeah. Okay, good. I've got a slightly different but maybe related dilemma to come up. But anything else on Sam versus Nat? I think we're a little split. I think we all agree it's better if the rules are established up front. Fairness, I think, as Sami just said, is going to be really key here. But you can look at it from different perspectives. Anything else on that one?
I think the only other thing I was just going to, yeah, as you say, fairness and consistency, I think are key, just in terms of the amount of time you spend with each person, giving everybody the opportunity to kind of be successful, and how you distribute opportunities as well. So
Yeah.
I do think that's really critical, that consistency aspect.
Fairness, consistency, and communication is, yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, who are you giving the opportunity to? Nat or
Well,
Sam?
I would. I don't want to be on the fence on this. Yeah, I want to understand Sam a lot better. You know, why are they struggling? Is it they've just had a bit of bad luck? Do I really believe in my heart that they could make it, but they just need a bit more confidence? If I was to give it to Sam, I would get personally very involved. You know, not just to observe them, but to help them, to provide that safety net. I could be tempted to split it between the two of them. I'm not personally in favour of splitting things if there's no reason for it. But if geographically north and south we need to call on people, yeah, maybe I would consider that. I'd probably if I. It's how I perceive it. I'd probably go with Sam, but it's very nuanced, and that's why it's an interesting dilemma. I could see myself making either decision or the split one. I just want a lot more detail, and I totally agree. I would not want to get into this position. I'd want to have rules up front. I'd want to be closer to Sam so I know why they're failing. They're not failing, they're struggling. Yeah. So interesting one. Listen, a dilemma came up. It actually came up yesterday. I was with a sales manager, and he just said, look, I've just had a call from somebody. So this guy has he's got 2 vacancies in his team for an account manager. And he had a call from somebody that he's known for many, many years. And they just said, hello, I just want to catch up. Clearly, this person has figured out that there's a vacancy and they're currently working for a competitor. And he said, look, I know this person and they're okay. They're reasonably good. They're definitely a safe pair of hands. They could definitely do the job. They've never been a superstar in the past, so they're not my ideal profile, but they're pretty good. Should I even consider employing them, or you know, I could just blow them away straight away and say no, you're not. But there's a personal relationship there. They're well known in the industry. They've got lots of contacts. They're a very competent account manager. But there's a but there, and you know he worked with this person 10 years ago or something. How would you react to that kind of phone call? Sami, I'll start with you.
You know,
does it happen to you? I've had this happen to me
all the time.
Yeah.
You know, Sophie, the one thing you said earlier on the call that's still resonating in my head. You said you wanted, you know, the power principle, and you know, the fact I didn't see the irony in it. You know, Steve asked me about where I spent most of my time, and it's the low performers. And it's one of those, like, you just smack your head. I'm like, why am I spending my time on the lowest performers? That means that I'm wasting my time, basically. But then the other side of that is this exact question you just mentioned, Steve. We were not a very attractive company to hire people. Sometimes you literally were stuck with mid performers. And so this brings us back to the question you just asked. If it was up to me, if I was, and I think that's a lesson I learned, you know, I was burned a few times. If I'm not enthusiastic about a candidate, I will not make an offer. So if I don't feel 100% enthusiastic about this is the person who's going to make this role, they're going to make their numbers, I have no doubts. Because even when you go through all the process, you check on this person, you get references, referrals, all of that, all the good stuff. When they start working, you're going to discover some gaps that you didn't know before. So imagine if you put all this effort in and you think it's a perfect candidate and there are gaps. Now, if someone comes in with your full realization that they're not 100% good and you're like iffy and you're, oh, I don't know, it's going to be a lot worse once they hit the ground. So I would not make the hire unless I was absolutely have to. I would not make that hire.
Okay, even though you've got 2 vacancies, They're a known quantity. They're going to be reasonable. They're not going to, be a failure. But okay, Sophie, you're bouncing around with something to say
I
here.
am. Listen to your gut. You already know the answer. Block their number. There you go.
I thought we were data-driven and fair. Richard, what would you say?
Listen to your gut.
I sort of half and half agree with Sophie. I wouldn't hire them, that's definite. But I would actually have the call with them and potentially give it a bit of consideration. But my gut is telling me, same as Sophie's and Sammy's, that I'm not hiring them, so I'm unlikely to take it further. But there might be other reasons just to have the call. I think it's always worth speaking to people, keeping that dialogue open. So I'd definitely have the call, but I'd also be quite upfront as like why I wouldn't be hiring them as well if we took that conversation further.
Okay. I guess for me it's there's a relationship. They're well known in the industry. So I probably wouldn't block them. I would be pleasant to them. But I've made the mistake many times of hiring what seems to be the best candidate, but my gut just isn't quite there. So if you're not 100%, just don't do it. Even though it's going to be painful. Yeah. I think it's painful because you haven't got jobs filled. You're not making quota, but you come to regret it, don't you? Okay. Listen, I got one. So on the same kind of role here, a final quick dilemma for us. So you've still got these vacancies. You've got an internal candidate coming through from another department or whatever. It might have been a pre-sales person or something. And so you interview them, and within 5 minutes, you know that they're not going to be suitable. Do you just say to them, look, this is not going to work, let's stop here? Or do you have the courtesy and go through the 30, 45 minutes of interviewing them and giving them feedback and whatever? And I've been in this situation, and it may be an external candidate, but let's assume it's an internal candidate as well. How would you handle that? Richard, go on.
I think I'd probably do the polite thing and go through the process. So I think I'd give them the sort of the 30-minute interview or something that was fairly much expected. You might cut it slightly shorter, but if it's an internal candidate, there's maybe other roles for them within the business, or it's perhaps helpful to develop a bit of a relationship with that person for the future so they can see their career within the organisation. If it's an external candidate they've driven to see you, I think you've probably got to give them the 30 minutes time, etc. as well. I would potentially cut it a bit short, but I'd make it a bit longer than 5. Okay,
so very polite and building relationships. Sophie, you're deep into relationships and things. What
you're waiting for me to do the polite thing. I would take a comfort break after 5 minutes and then go and phone that person's manager and say, why? What were you thinking? So I'd have that phone call, then maybe I'd come back into the room and I would carry on. But I would, there would be no false hope or promise. I would probably ramp it up a notch. And be maybe a little bit more challenging, so that when the feedback did come, we didn't have a polite conversation. That person is left feeling with no uncertain, terms that perhaps this isn't the job for me. So I would,
you take the break and be a little bit devious.
Yeah.
Which is not a word I normally associate with you, but okay.
Then I'd have a word with their internal manager. Why was he wasting my time? But anyway, there you go.
Yeah, because you've lost 20 minutes of your life. Correct. Sami, what would you do?
So the candidate is internal.
Yes.
I would probably within, say, 10 or 15 minutes, if it's really not gelling, I would tell them on the call because it's internal, and because you're ostensibly more senior, it's a coaching moment. Like, listen, this is your family. Well, not family. You're like a member of the team.
Yeah.
You and me and your manager, we respect each other. So I'm gonna step out of line a little bit, but this is the role, this is where we expect the candidate to be. You're here. We see these gaps, and these gaps are not something that can be fixed on the job. It's something that we need immediately. So, the things that you do have are okay. We appreciate them, but we need a certain skill set or certain ability that you just simply don't have, and we don't see an opportunity to get you onto that.
Right.
And I've seen this before. I mean, this has happened before, where you've had people internally raise. This happens all the time, in fact.
Yeah.
And having that honest conversation, and I would also tell them, listen, you want this job. These jobs open up every once in a while. So why don't you, if you really want this job, these are the areas you need to work on. Develop your speaking ability, typing ability. Go get some courses on graphic design if you want to do presentations. Go take speaking. Like, there are things that people can do to develop themselves. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And would you offer to help them yourself directly?
I have offered. I was always on the mentor list in my company, so anyone can reach out to me and ask for mentorship. So that's always a thing. So it would just literally be a bandwidth issue. If I had the time, I didn't have other mentees. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and very quickly from all three of you, because I think we're all aligned on this. If it was an external candidate, and literally after 5 minutes you think there is just no chance I'm ever going to employ this person, would you cut it short, or what would you do? Sami, what would you do?
The one thing I always worry about, I used to do this in my performance reviews, is I always wonder if it's that quickly. Is it me or is it the candidate? So when I used to do performance reviews, I would always do them at the same time during the day to make sure I'm fair to all my team members. So it's always like after lunch or the first thing, so that I'm in a similar mental space. So I would probably consider asking to reschedule, just to give the candidate another chance. Yeah, because sometimes, if it's obviously the experiencing, like you can see it on the CV. If it's an experiencing, before coming to the call that this person doesn't have what it takes, that's fine. But if it's like a communication gelling thing and it's just not landing and something is off, I would probably, if I don't have other candidates and I'm really curious about this person, I'll probably ask for a reschedule. That's what I'd probably do.
Okay, interesting. Sophie?
I think I would follow it through, because I would worry from an HR perspective that the candidate might, complain that they weren't given, the full opportunity to demonstrate and answer all their questions. So I would worry legally that I would be outside of my scope if I didn't follow through and give them the best opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that's a concern, certainly in the UK, Western Europe, not everywhere. Okay, interesting. Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I say if it's like a 30-minute interview, I think 5 minutes if I've made my mind up. To Sami's point, I might be questioning, am I correct? Am I not correct? So I'd use the next 15 minutes to basically dig a little bit deeper and to go through the interview process. And then I think, just to kind of change slightly something I'd said earlier, I would make sure, internal, external, that there was no false expectation. And that last 10 minutes would be to be quite upfront about that, or give them opportunity to kind of address my concerns as well. So treat it as a bit as a coaching point, which I think Sami said, but actually to be upfront, so they don't leave thinking they've got the job when I know they absolutely haven't. So.
Yeah. No, I think that's always essential. Okay, interesting. I think once in my career, I've been in this position, but carried on and then changed my mind. But there's hundreds, many cases where after 5 minutes I know, and then we're just going through the motions. So it's possible that they turn it around. It hadn't really occurred to me much, Sami's point about, is it me? Am I just in a bad place myself? But I would counter that with they're having a reaction on me, and that's what customers are going to get. So I think it's the internal one particularly. I really like give them some coaching, give them very clear feedback, and I would go back to their manager afterwards and say, why am I interviewing somebody who had maybe false expectations? If the manager had briefed them and said, look, we're not sure if you're ready, go and have a chat with Steve and get some feedback, that's fine. But if they've been encouraged to go for it and they're not ready, I'd have quite a serious conversation with their manager as well. So there's often dynamics in this. Okay, interesting. Well, we've had 3 little dilemmas there, all kind of related in one way or another. What would be your overall takeaways from this episode? Richard, what's going through your mind when you reflect on these 3 dilemmas?
Well, being in sales a long time, you always need more information, don't you? So I'd always do a bit more discovery, and I think we would on the 3 dilemmas. So what, why is Sam South not succeeding? Potentially the other candidate, what the mid performer, etc. Why, a bit more about their background, what's quite so average about them, etc. Even though I know we're not hiring them, but I think always just dig a bit deeper.
Dig deeper. That is, I write that so often on flip charts in workshops and things.
Okay,
dig deep from a sales and from a management point of view. Dig deeper. Sophie, what are you reflecting on?
I've learned over the years to always listen to my gut, I think, because it's very rarely wrong, and if you're feeling a little I'm not sure, 95% of your brain is your subconscious, and your subconscious has already decided before your conscious mind has, and that's your gut speaking to you. So I'm going to listen to it very, very closely, and if I'm not sure about something, or I've got some sort of internal churn going on, then I'm going to want to explore it in a little bit more detail and perhaps dig beneath the surface and not have a knee-jerk reaction to anything. It's gonna, my spidey senses are going to be on alert for what else might be going on here. So that's what I'm taking away.
Okay. Interesting. We might explore this more on a future episode, but the power of intuition, particularly where you've got experience and how you get that into intuition, and wisdom is a word that often comes up. Sami, what are your key takeaways from this?
I mean, it's something that if you've we've all been salespeople, so I think leaders, sales ops people specifically, want certainty when it comes to sales. And I think if there's anything we learned on this call is in sales, you do your best, you increase your odds as much as possible, but until the order is in your hand, it's never 100%. And even then, it's not a done deal. So this ambiguity and lack of clear black and white decision points is kind of the nature of the beast when it comes to sales, and anyone who, especially if you go into sales leadership, it's a muscle you need to develop.
Yeah. And for me, that's the joy of it as well. And it's maybe why, hopefully people do pay you a lot of money, but it's, sure. Particularly as a sales manager, it's not painting by numbers, and you can't do it from a spreadsheet. We all know we need to use data more and more, but we have to make judgment calls every day. Sometimes it's just in the moment when we're in front of somebody interviewing them, or it's a big strategic decision. But it's their judgment calls that, which is for me really interesting, and is as I say, the joy of the job. And okay, fantastic. Listen, I've enjoyed this. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and we've all learned something from it, particularly our listeners and viewers. Hopefully they found it enjoyable, food for thought for everyone. Any final words? And then I'm just going to say goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for including me, Steve.
Thanks,
this was good fun.
Thanks.
If you're an aspiring, new, developing, or an experienced sales manager in complex business to business, or you know of someone who is, you may want to go to www.realsalesmanager, that's realsalesmanager, all one word, .com, to learn about our unique blend of training and coaching to help aspiring sales managers to decide if it's right for them and how to go about getting a job, to help new sales managers get as effective as possible, as quickly as possible, and to help developing and experienced sales managers with a personalised programme to improve some of their specific skills.